Alright guys, what we're talking about this time is trigger finger placement. It may seem kind of, kind of remedial, but everybody learns, keep your finger off the trigger, blah blah blah. What I teach is my thought process is this. You have to educate your trigger finger to two things. One, what it feels like to be on the trigger doing work. Actually how the finger manipulates the trigger. And two, it has to be given a definitive place, a definite place other than the trigger to go when you're not in the act of shooting. And I refer to that definitive spot as register. So what I will say is keep your finger off the trigger and in register. Until the weapon is indexed on threat, you made the decision to shoot. What does that mean and why does it matter? Well, I've had some people comment or ask questions in some of the videos. They've seen my trigger finger and notice how far away from the trigger it is and what's going on. Well, this for me is register. This is off the trigger. This is off the trigger. This is off the trigger. This is off. There's a whole lot of off trigger. It's kind of nebulous, and our brain, I think, doesn't do very well with that. I like to give it a definite thing to do, not this whole universe of what not to do, but the thing to do. Well, the thing to do is either it's on the trigger doing work, or it is off the trigger and in register. Now, the reason I like this is, I don't know how much you can see on the video, but no matter how hard I tighten down this hand, no matter how tightly I grip the gun, the trigger finger is not going anywhere. It's not going to inadvertently slip. It's not going to fall. It's not going to be jarred off. I can hold the gun till it's shaking, till my fingertip is going white, and it's not going to move anywhere until I consciously make the decision to move it to the trigger. If it's in some other place, the likelihood of it moving or the ease of it getting onto the trigger, I think, is greater. I know for a long time people taught finger off the trigger, or finger along the frame. Masad Ayub has taught the curled index finger, this inbound finger this way on the takedown notch on the Glock. I'm not a fan of this because our fingers only work really in two ways. They're either extending or they're contracting. They're either moving away or they're moving in. If it's moving in, which is what's happening here, and you're startled or you fall, it's probably going to continue moving in, winding up on the trigger. So I like the idea of having a hard register, a strong register. Now, I stuck a Surefire X300 with the DG switch, the DevGru switch, this tape switch, on this pistol for a reason. Some of you may have seen the Force Science report a couple months ago now, where they were claiming that this particular light setup, this particular tape switch setup was leading to negligent discharges, and that under stress, police officers were trying to turn the light on, which is accomplished by tightening in with this finger on this pressure pad, and they were pulling the trigger. And so use of the flashlight, use of this switch was causing all sorts of problems. And I think they had some evidence that guys were NDing their pistols with flashlights mounted with a tape switch, and they sort of jumped to conclusions. But one of the things I think was happening was the trigger finger wasn't taught to be somewhere. And if the finger doesn't have a definite job to do, and you've got other fingers in the hand doing things, it's more likely that finger's going to join in. Same thing when you're doing offhand only draw stroke, where particularly if you're working with a retention holster and you got to get this left hand over here to a retention holster and pop snaps and rock hoods and get the gun out, it's a very common tendency. Of course, this is a Raven concealment holster. It doesn't have any retention devices on it, but it's a common thing for guys to reach back here with a couple of fingers, leaving the pinky, leaving the ring finger loose to get that gun out of the holster, and then what happens is that pinky wants to join the rest of the fingers, and that's a very ugly problem. So just like when we're doing this, we're getting the whole hand involved to make sure no fingers get on the trigger. We've got to give them a job to do. When it comes to not shooting the gun, it has a job to do. And I think if we have a hard register, a good solid index point for that trigger finger, then a lot of the other problems go away, or at least mitigated. Now, some people will say, well, yeah, but this is going to be slower. Get the finger from here to the trigger is going to be slower than here or here, or whatever. All I can tell you is get a shot timer, go to the range, play with it yourself, and see what your spreads are. I don't have the data sitting here in front of me, but last time I was at the range, last time I ran these three finger positions on the timer, the overall times overlapped. There was no significant difference time-wise from any of these positions to get the gun to fire. So I think that's a shibboleth. That's not a significant. That's not a real problem. But hard register does give you some advantages when it comes to not inadvertently firing the gun. So that's what's going on. You see my finger up there? That's what I teach. Some people will say, well, yeah, but doesn't it get hot? Yes, if you're on the range shooting a lot, it can get a little warm. It's never gotten so warm that I was unable to do this. But in general, we handle our guns a whole lot more than we shoot them. And I think having the index finger up in register and a fixed point on the gun is a better way to go. So thank you guys.